Right, okay, let's get started. Yes, there is a stream. Sorry, it's a few minutes late. Reasons for that. Okay, it wasn't technical problems this time. So, hello, welcome to the Tuesday Talk. Nice. It's still the Tuesday Talk for at least one more week. It could potentially be the Tuesday Talk for a good while now because it doesn't look like I would have to raid on a Tuesday. Good evening, everyone. I did get held up. Yes, I mean, I don't think we I don't know, like in terms of what is spoilerish, because obviously there's only North America been able to play it. So we should probably talk about the cinematic being technically spoilerish. I don't know. Antorus is now out. So yeah, we'll leave out exactly what happens. But, you know, that is from the cinematic, the background behind me. Comes no surprise that Sargeras would be involved there. I mean, it's not really his sword, is it? It's a different thing there, because his sword sort of looks a bit different. Hi, Lunaris. But, yeah, so we won't talk about anything spoilerish at all. Lore-wise, I mean, gameplay-wise, we can talk about the facts, you know, that there's now, it's suggested, as was expected, that Amunthul's vision, the trinket from like Argosian Maker, the legendary one, the one that's automatically legendary, you know, is personal loot, which is good. There were some scary ideas being bandied about, I gather, the development team. Now, there are still things that could be interesting. A suggestion, and it's no more than a suggestion, that if you get your Path of the Titans trinket, your other Path of the Titans trinket, good evening, Necrolik, that the Path of, sorry, and you get it upgraded all the way through, that maybe there's a, or that you get all of your Path of the Titans trinkets for your class, I should say, that there's actually a decent chance of you getting the Amunthul's vision, a much better chance, for example. Shadow Priest got tons of changes. Right, yeah, I haven't really. I've been so busy since I've got home from work with things that I haven't really had chance to try and catch up. It doesn't surprise me that they've made changes that they haven't posted notes for. That is not necessarily uncommon. Oh, God. Let's shut that thing off. Go away. Let's have a look. Hot fixes. I thought these the last ones I saw were just PvP. Oh, yeah, it's a load of shadow changes. Wow. Oh, my God, there's loads. What have we got? Void Eruption no longer deals a separate damage event for your... Void Eruption damage increased by 700%. I say this like I know what Void Eruption is. I ain't got a clue what Void Eruption is. I'm guessing it's a small amount of damage, because you're going to increase the damage of anything by 700%. It's a small amount of damage. Did they? I can only see it for today. I don't see any other ones. Yes, I will be raiding in Antorus. Very last minute. Actually, I'm in a bit of an awkward situation with that, because it got very last minute, like really literally last minute. And so I did what I wouldn't normally do, and I applied for more than one guild at once. And you know, so there's a guild that's accepted me that I'm going to have to say, sorry, I'm withdrawing my application, which I don't like to do. Now, I've sort of said that to someone, and they said, oh, it'll be fine. They're used to this sort of thing. I mean, I know as a recruitment officer, if someone's applied and I've accepted them and they say, no, I'm going somewhere else now, I wouldn't be too happy. You know, I wouldn't be furious. Yes, I'd be more annoyed if they came over, raided with us for a bit, and then buggered off somewhere else, than just straight up going, do you know what, sorry. But still awkward. So yes, I will actually be a raider. So the very real, it is Alliance as well. I mean, when it came to it, yes, I do heavily favour Alliance. I will take more of a risk on going to an Alliance guild than I will a Horde guild. And it's not just the cost. You know, the cost, whenever I go to a guild, I don't expect to disappear anytime soon. So I expect to be in there for the long haul. There won't be a stream tomorrow, however, because I've got my late night thing. I have put it on the schedule on Twitch. I will try and compensate with a raid on Friday. I will do a late night raid on Friday, which is what I tend to try and do if I've had to deprive you of one midweek because of work. It very rarely happens with it, just every now and then. There's like 4 times a year when work says you're working an evening. And that puts the kibosh on that one. And rather than get home and scrabble and just try and stream, because the other difficult thing is that I will be streaming those raids. Yes, they'll be sort of the same days. They do actually. What's going on with this? The old lights aren't working too well today. I don't know what that's about. I'm a bit flickery. It's actually a 4-day raiding guild, which is fine, but it's the same raid days that I'd been doing already, just with an extra one on Sunday. Whether I'll stream that, I suppose I probably would stream that. Why not? So I suppose that would mean there would be a Sunday evening stream as well. The problem is tomorrow, so here's the way it's going in my head. So after this, I've still got to do record the WoW Flash video. I don't even know what I'm going to talk about yet. What are we going to talk about? But that's got to come out tomorrow. So I've got to do that tonight. Transfer my character. And try and get that over there. Remembering to save my bloody profiles this time. Even though I still haven't completely set up LVUI or Tell Me When as I would prefer it. But it is at least set up. So I need to save those profiles. I don't suppose I need to save my weak aura profiles for Tuma Sargeras. I've got the ones for Antorus. Antorus? Yes. Yeah. I think I've got those ones already. Transfer it across. But the thing is, like, I've got to get it set up tonight because when I come home tomorrow, it's straight into the raid on bosses I've never seen before. Like, you know, not personally. I've got a crib sheet. Someone in the rec community very kindly came up with a crib sheet of very important things to remember on each fight. Because whenever I read through the guides, like the Fat Boss guys, they write those on Wowhead. They do their own videos, of course. You know, I've learned these things. But then the problem is the abilities get muddled up in my head into terms of which is for which boss. Once you're on to Mythic Progress, it's so easy. After the first week of Mythic Progress, it's so easy because your focus is on one boss. But Heroic Week's a nightmare because you're expected to just go through all the bosses. So you've got to learn all the bosses all at once without ever having seen them. First week of Mythic is easier because you know you're not going to go through the whole thing. But you're potentially wanting to move quickly through the first few at least. So you need those sorting out. But after that, you slow down a bit. So it's easy. You just have to focus. You just one new boss at a time. So, yes. Yeah, that's a bit of a relief, actually. Because I was actually wondering what the hell I'm going to do. Well, you know, without raiding, it would allow me to spend more time on the channel. But with some of my content, arguably with less credibility. Because, you know, that would be that. But, yeah, so I'll get to... And also, Antorus, it's one of those raid tiers. I wouldn't like to miss any raid tier. But if I had to miss one, you really wouldn't want to miss one that's as important lore-wise as this one is going to be. I mean, at the end of the day, this is probably the biggest raid tier lore-wise since Icecrown Citadel, which I also missed, but I missed that because I wasn't really playing the game at the time. I'd sort of come back on a super casual basis to play with a friend's Scrub Guild, and, you know. So I saw bits of it, but not the Lich King. So I've sort of already missed out on what would be the other major lore. Has there been another... Let's have a think. I can't really think of another raid tier that I would say was as iconic as Icecrown. Because I would say even Black Temple wasn't. Because Black Temple for me, although, you know, people have a lot of regard for it because it was... I mean, even at the time, because it was Illidan, it never made a lot of sense to me, the thing with Illidan. Because, you know, at the end of Vanilla, so the Dark Portal opened up again. And... the reason for the Alliance going through the Dark Portal wasn't to defeat Illidan. We didn't give a shit about Illidan. Who the hell is Illidan? No one gave a crap about Illidan. The reason we went there was because the Dark Portal opened from the Alliance point of view. There was a load of Alliance heroes who were trapped on the other side of it from Warcraft 2. The Horde, most of the Horde didn't give a crap either. But the Orcs, well, their brethren were also trapped on the other side. The ones who never moved over to Azeroth. So we'll have to... So yeah, you know, and it's like... I always felt at the time in TBC that we were being moved towards defeating Illidan. It's like, well, why? Why was Illidan our focus? I mean, I know from, you know, the selling point, marketing point, it was a focus because Illidan was one of those major lore characters in Warcraft 3. The Lich King probably being the other one, or Arthas at any rate. Well, it did. Like Burning Crusade, there was like, you know, as I say, the motivation for going through the Dark Portal had nothing to do with Illidan. So I don't really regard Black Temple as that iconic, you know. Whereas Icecrown Citadel, different matter. That was, you know, lore-wise, that was a very important tier. And I cannot think of another tier that had the same gravitas, to be honest. I'm not saying, Lenoris, that it didn't have a lot of lore to it. What I'm saying is, we're on this side of the Azeroth side of the Dark Portal. Dark Portal, and it hasn't opened since Warcraft 2. You know, suddenly opens. Your first thought is not, let's go and kick Illidan's ass. Your first thought is, as Alliance, it's, oh, Khadgar and those guys are all over there. Let's go and see how they are. And your first thought as Horde is, well, most Tauren and Troll, it's like, what? But as Orcs, it's like, oh, my auntie's still on the other side of that. I'll go and pay her a visit. Do I think it's easy to get into a guild if you're a decent known streamer or YouTuber? I don't know. You'd have to ask someone. I haven't. But if much larger ones, I suppose it depends what you'd want out of it. They may see it as a disadvantage because obviously they need to know that you are committed to the guild and would be a reliable raider. That's quite important. So, I mean, for me, for example, obviously work has to come first, which is why I'll be missing the opening of Antorus tomorrow. Thank you very much. So work has to come first. That pays the bills. Then it actually is my raiding. That comes ahead of the channel. Then the channel is next. Not really, no. It doesn't, unless it really comes up. Oh, thank you, Big Tiger. That's really nice. Let's move this up, actually. Where is it? It's this one. There we go. So now, unless it happens to come up, like if they're asking me, for example, you know, activities as a Retribution Paladin, I will mention the sort of guides I do. But in terms of other things, not really. Oh, thank you. Hiya. But, so yeah. I mean, they know I'm streaming because... But anyway, yeah, we'll see. Let's just keep moving things around, though. Because I had to do this in haste. Because, of course, I only created this today. Because, of course, I couldn't have possibly seen the cinematic before today, could I? But, yeah, it's... So yeah, I've got to now learn all the fights. It's been quite weird. Although I've been looking at some of the fights in the videos, I think in my own head, because my brain was saying, why are you learning this? You're not actually going to be raiding it. It's not, I've not been as focused on it as I otherwise would have been. Plus, of course, having to spend a lot of time trying to find a guild. So, I'm not going to answer loads of Ret Paladin questions, but let's work on do the odd one. What do I think Ret is looking like going to Antorus? We should be absolutely fine. Tomb of Sargeras wasn't... The reason Tomb of Sargeras wasn't great for us was because of the single target focus. And our single target in Tomb was not good. Let's make no bones about it. There have been times when our single target has been good. For example, like Emerald, at the start of the tier expansion, sorry, it was good. Emerald Nightmare was really good. Tomb of Sargeras, it dropped quite a lot, really. It wasn't good compared to a lot of other ones. Antorus, not so much a single target focus, and our tier set bonuses are the two set bonus is powerful. So it's want to load on mastery. All that mastery that I've been getting, all of a sudden is going to be useful. As soon as you get the two set bonus, it's not a case of suddenly whacking on a load of mastery right now. You get 2% bonus. But anyway, I'm just trying to think now. Can't even think. Have we found Amonful's trinket? It's not been officially confirmed, but in terms of the number of things, it's it's where it's been happening. It just basically looks like it's personal loot, as it should be. Really, it absolutely should be personal loot. But that's how it's supposed to happen now. I've actually just realised another thing. Yeah, someone's just seen someone in MMO Champion mentioning me. Someone was asking about BIS list for Antorus. Bad thing. Never talk about a BIS list in Legion, because Titan Fortune makes a complete nonsense of it. But you can talk about, if we're talking about base item level stuff, what would be the best gear. And I did a couple of videos, but they're really just vlogs on tier and trinkets. I actually still need to do my Ret Paladin guide for Antorus, as in, the companion thing. I need to do that this weekend. I would have done it this weekend, the weekend just gone normally, but obviously I was a bit busy. It has to be a random drop. Amonful's Vision does not. It's not a Legion legendary in terms of the restriction in terms of how many you can wear. It's totally separate to that. For example, the legendaries, the normal legendaries. Can't get around my words now. Say, with brackets in 2, how many you can equip. Amonful's Vision doesn't. You can wear, and it was confirmed as well, but you could test this on PTR. It was easy. You can wear that alongside 2 normal Legion legendaries. But the ring you get for the quest for defeating Argus is counted as one of your 3. So you would only use the new ring, which you can just get for completing the quest, if your light shadow traits are really good. If you've got 3 Torment the Weak, you're going to use that. So yeah, the legendary ring is counted as one of the 3. You would only take it if you've got good traits, those Netherlight Crucible special traits. How many Rets does the new guild run in? I will be one of a pair. There is an incumbent already there, so I get a Ret friend. I don't think Ret Pal is screwing light bulbs. They're screwing beds like everyone else. Once you defeat Argus, random members of the raid will automatically acquire their specs epic Pantheon trinket. Yes, it's supposed to be. Well, what I've heard, obviously there's not been a large enough sample size yet. It seems to be, if you have a full 30-man heroic raid going on, like a few, 3 or 4 will get one. It is just in time, yes. So we'll just, we'll see more when it's gone through. Plus, of course, it's one of those things that Blizzard might well tune if they think it's a bit too high a drop rate or a bit too low. Although that's the sort of thing they should have thought about, really. You would have thought already in terms of how many they want to get it. But, do expect another, we've had, obviously, the tier set tuning last week, which was a little bit late on in the day for my liking. Next week, just before Mythic goes, so this time next week, fully expect to see a round of class tuning. Like, as one of you's already pointed out, they've already done that for Shadow Priests. Fairly substantial, it looks to me, without actually knowing anything about Shadow Priests. But it looks like a tuning thing, isn't it? So they've nerfed a load of things and then buffed something else, haven't they? But anyway, yeah. Oh, is it a Mythic Plus tuning thing, really? Because surely it would have an effect as well on other things, like, you know, Shadow Word Pain being reduced by 4%, Vampiric Touch, they must have some significant effect in raids. What it says here, compensation for the Void Eruption buff in extended fights. So that must be talking about bosses, really, mustn't it? Certainly, yes. Battle for Azeroth, JD, and Azerite armor. So you're having a discussion with another viewer of one of your videos. They were considering we might need multiples of the same item. I have no idea how it works, though. That's the thing. Like, there's so much. There's no detail. It's quite likely that's because Blizzard don't know the detail themselves. It's possible that they know some detail, but the right questions weren't asked of them. Would we need multiples of the same? So the Azerite army you're talking about, concerned we might need multiples of the same Azerite armor pieces. It all depends on whether the traits are attached to that individual piece or whether it's to your character but is only in play when you're wearing the piece, doesn't it? I suppose it all depends on that. It is possible, yes, that you... The thing is, would Blizzard want that? It all depends on whether that's the sort of behaviour Blizzard want to encourage. I'd be doubtful they want to encourage that behaviour. But if they're either not bothered about it or they do, then you would certainly want, yeah, multiple of them. Yeah, yeah, but Kasashi, I think what he's talking about, you might have the same trait options, but which one you choose, is it tied to the armor piece or is it tied to you as a character? Now, I would guess as you as a character, but you have to wear the pieces to get the benefit. But I don't know. Can you change the traits freely? I don't think the word freely will really apply to it. Like in Legion, for example, we can't even change our talents freely. And when this new talent system that we have, I say new talent system, it came in MOP, so it's not really new anymore. But it's new for me because I remember what the talent system was like before. But when the new talent system came into the game, the current one, at the time they said that it's good to change your talents on a regular basis. Because that's what people said. It'll be a surprise, Start Lord. You can find out tomorrow, maybe the day after. But anyway, so yeah, they said, because instantly people would say, well, we'll be changing talents every fight, won't we? And Blizzard at the time, which fair enough was a different group of developers, and some of the developers weren't on it. So they said, you know, that's a good thing. Whereas now in Legion, all of a sudden it's a bad thing to change your talents, which is why they put the penalty in. Now, I suspect the reason they did it was really to do with Mythic Plus. I don't think they have a big problem with us changing talents on raid bosses. I think it's really... But I'd have... Like, for me, it's a combination of two things. I think they first of all came upon the idea of penalising the ability to change talents because of Mythic Plus. So, in which case, what you do is you prevent talent changes in Mythic Plus, which they do. Once you've started it, you can't change your talents. Or even your spec. But then you have these reagents that are not like the reagents where you just bought off a vendor. You have to actually craft these. I think that was just to give scribes something to do, because what do scribes do in this expansion? You do Vantus runes. It's only for raiders. And you only have to make a few a week anyway. And that's it. So I think they gave them this for... because although glyphs still exist, they're not like they were. They're not as big as they were, are they? I don't even use any glyphs. You'd hope they learn from the Nether Crucible. I think they probably have learnt something from the Nether Crucible. Because I did find it curious, because it's not going to be RNG like the Netherlight Crucible. It's almost like, the Azerite armor seems to me to be almost like the Netherlight Crucible, but without the RNG as to which trait you get. It's like, it's going to be set, you just choose what's going to be most suitable for you. Maybe it's time to remove inscription. Well, you know, quite. It only came into the game in the first place because of glyphs, and as glyphs have basically died out, what is the point in it? I completely agree with that. Evening, Morales. So on the website Silverhand, you see two changes that stand out. Enchant neck, mark of the train shoulder impression. Oh yeah, well that depends on you personally. Again, this is another rec question for everyone else. So whether you use soldier or use the prolonged power, that you have to, or Satyr, which is an old war, respectively. Depends on, you have to sim it for yourself because it sort of depends on a few things. So it's not automatically, it's nothing suddenly changed that means we use those. But Potion of Prolonged Power has always been good if there's going to be any cleaving during the period of it. Like Demonic Inquisition, I always start off with Potion of Prolonged Power because you're going to be cleaving the two bosses at the start of the fight. An AoE situation, it's better because Old War is only a single target. Also in Mythic Plus Dungeons, unless you're just on a single boss, again, you'd use Potion of Prolonged Power. Obviously, it's a lot cheaper if you can go Prolonged Power. Well, yeah, some people have used it anyway just because it's cheaper. I mean, I would still probably carry a stock of each until Sims sort of suggest to me that under no circumstances am I getting any benefit from Old War, which, you know, is potentially going to happen at some point in Antorus for me. Although, do I? Oh yeah, that's the point. Yeah, because my Alchemist has the rank 3 now for Prolonged Power, because that's the recipe that dropped from that world boss that just never appeared. It like appeared once, quite early on in Legion, and then never again. And then they changed it, so instead of being random pop-ups for world bosses, it was on a set sequence. Then a few weeks ago it popped up. So I got it, but I don't have the rank 2 yet. They get that from one of the dungeons. I can't remember which dungeon now. So I need to get the rank 2 on my Alchemist before I can get the rank 3. And then, yes, I'll have to start doing stuff as well, because you need Bloods of Sargeras for it. And I don't do anything on my monk. That's the thing. So maybe I need to get my monk into action and get some Bloods of Sargeras farmed. Let's have a look. Just wondering if you'd be able to explain with the Arcano Crystal. The Arcano Crystal is massively over budget. Well, it's over budget, should we say. Let's not blow it out of proportion. It's over budget. Blizzard know about this, and they've known about it for a long time. The last time they said anything about it was a long time ago, and their argument was, it's hilarious actually, it's so funny. Their argument was that they would do something about it, but they figured that as the expansion goes on, the item level, because they're just, you know, in terms of it dropping off with the gym, it's always going to be an 860. Baseline, it can Titan Forge, of course it can, but baseline 860. And their argument was, well, it's going to come to a point where it's going to fall so far behind in item level that it won't be as like desirable. The problem is they put vendors in the game that allow us to get it at a much higher item level. So I just last week, or the weekend, was it? Friday, I think it was. It was Happy Friday, I got it. I got the 910 Arcano Crystal. Fantastic. I now wear that trinket. I replaced a 935 trinket, a decent 935 trinket, for the 910 Arcano Crystal. And yeah, it is going to be better than a stats to get anything like its item level, because it is over budget. Why they ever brought something in like that, I couldn't tell you, but they did. So, you know, the luck will really be on my side. I'll tell you what, if I somehow manage to snag an Amonthul's Vision early on in Antorus, I'll be using that and my Arcano Crystal, and I will be buying extra lottery tickets. The legendary Arcana will certainly be a tiny, well, a small portion. I'm not sure tiny is the right word, because if it's true, well, it depends. Because over time, There is a suggestion, and again, I don't know, this was a hint that was given, that it might well be the case that the chance of it dropping for you could well be increased, shall we say, once you've acquired all of the Path of the Titans trinkets that your class is able to get. Which is a bit of bad news for druids, because they'd need 4 of them, wouldn't they? And like demon hunters have been having laugh because they only need 2. Well, yes, if you want to do it on all the modes, normally heroic, only so many. Well, I mean, depends how late you're talking about it. Sure enough, because this is the last tier of the expansion, people are going to be running Argus all the way up to the next expansion. It'd be a bit of a kick in the teeth getting it right at the end, wouldn't it? But yeah. Mages have only 1 trinket. Oh, that's true, yes. Yeah, that is true. Now, it's only a suggestion, by the way. I don't know this. It's not even been strongly hinted. Strongly hinted means I think that's what they're going to do. This is just a suggestion as a thought that seems to have been bandied about. Some are saying that it only drops once you upgrade one of them to 1,000. That won't be true. Oh, the fact that it could be 100% drop once you've upgraded one to 1,000 may be true. But, good evening, Alain. It will not be true that it doesn't drop at all until you've done that. Is it worth pugging Argus 9 times this reset and spending bonus rolls to try and get the trinket? If you have the capacity to do that, it all depends as well how important the tier is to you and how likely you're getting from other sources. But generally speaking, I would say if you've got the capacity to pug Argus 9 times and coin for the trinket, it might well be worthwhile. It says you can't bonus roll the trinkets. If you can't bonus roll the trinkets, then it's not at all worthwhile. Because in terms of what else drops off the boss, who cares? It doesn't drop tier. Even if it drops a nice relic for some people, who gives a crap? As it is, the best I can hope for is 1 heroic and 1 normal. So that would be 2. Then I'd miss a number of the heroic fights because again I'm going to be late tomorrow. That's really spectacularly annoying. So I would have to. I need to get tier. So I would attempt to get some tier sets from bosses that I can. I'd also, well, they said I had all the trinkets personally. Yeah, I saw that. After another day, I think we'd know for certain. But you'd probably think there's how many guilds have killed it, or are they basing this on data mined information? Because oh, there's nothing even on WoW Progress. Oh yes, there is. Hold on. Oh, there's no data there. No one's showing anything. No. So, are they? You know, you have to be a little bit careful. I'm not saying discount it. You have to be a little bit careful if you're talking about data mined information. It may be true. Well, this is an important thing. I have not asked of the new guild how many gnomes they have. This is something I will have to discover for myself. I mean, I know how many gnomes there will be in a few months. I just don't know how many there are to start with. Yes. I mean, it always depends, doesn't it? Although it doesn't show normal ones ever on WoW Progress anyway. It just shows heroic. So maybe some people have done it on, I don't know. But it's not showing anyone hasn't done anything on heroic. No, I haven't asked about the number of gnomes. So I don't really know what I'm up against in that regard. But will be interesting. There's always as well, because someone will do it fairly quickly, there is always a guild that sets out to just get to Heroic Argus really quickly, to get the world first on Heroic Argus. Hang on, what do you mean? A shadow priest and a holy priest. Yeah. You've got a gnome healer. The last time I raided with a gnome healer, it was only... I'd only just come back to the game. End of Cataclysm in Dragon Soul. And the bastard kept life gripping me into shit. He kept trying to basically get me killed. That's all. That's what I remember. I came back to the game, finally, tail between my legs, crawling back to it going, I'm sorry, I should never have left. All the usual stuff. Joined a raid, or joined a guild, and then saw this gnome priest. I thought, what the hell? What's going on here? Turns out priests could be gnomes at this point, which I didn't know about. But he just kept gripping. Something in him sort of picked up on the idea that I wasn't actually very pleasant towards gnomes. I don't know what I did to him, but he just kept gripping me into stuff. So then I had to retaliate by trying to get him killed myself, which is not actually very easy. It used to be quite easy to kill gnomes in vanilla. Stunningly easy to kill gnomes. Mostly because those gnomes would be mages or warlocks. In fact, in vanilla, I used to organise the paladins specifically to frustrate warlocks, because what we'd do on a wipe, the warlocks would disappear off somewhere in hellfire, so they didn't get a repair bill. So they'd kill themselves with their own hellfire. And then we used to assign paladins to go and heal the warlock in question, their target warlock, so that they couldn't hellfire themselves to death, so the boss would kill them and they wouldn't get out the repair bill. It became a bit of a game. By the time Nax came round, unfortunately, the gear on these warlocks was so good they could kill themselves before we could heal them up. There are no known paladins, Lenoris. It's been put to bed. It's simply been put to bed. Ian Hazakostas, the game director himself, has said the words that known paladins would not make sense. Oh, Neural Silencer. Yes, someone very kindly gave me Neural Silencer on the last few nights that we were doing on Mythic Kill Jaden. Because people kept swap blasting me. Which, the fact that you can't always tell who's done it, the fact that there's not something that lets you know who's done it, if they're being cunning, is a disgrace. Because I don't know who to take revenge upon. Just saw a screenshot of the Argus trinket. Which Argus trinket? What, the Argus trinket? Or just one of the Path of the Titans trinkets? Oh, I'm totally fine with you killing gnomes with it. But, although it's surprising that a gnome wouldn't know about a technological advancement like that. Oh, the legendary one. Someone is now hated by their entire guild. I wonder who got it. Oh, Holy Paladin. Oh, that's all right then. I was fearing you would tell me it'd be one of the lesser races. Let's have a look. Yeah. Well, maybe this will be maybe paladins have a higher chance to get it. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Certain classes getting a higher chance to get it. Certain classes who get a lot of benefit from all their secondary stats, unlike some who like want one secondary stat quite a lot and others not so much. But I would still... What's going to happen with the Legion legendaries going forward? No, well, this is... I have raised this very thing myself, Kasasha. What I hope happens... You know how we have like an heirloom tab? For our heirlooms, of course. It's my hope that we get a similar thing for these legendaries. Because we can't just store them. There's too many of them. We want to be able to keep them, so just being able to destroy them isn't going to be helpful. Because what if you want to keep them for time walking purposes? So, conflicts with the channel's moderation settings. What does that mean? I ain't got a clue how this Twitch game works. I have no idea how Twitch works. I just press a button and things happen, I'm afraid. They have to give us something. They've given us too many legendaries. They have a responsibility. No matter the fact that they're not carrying it on next one, they have a responsibility to give us some way of keeping them without taking up. And the heirloom tab is the obvious course of action. Oh yeah, there are certain banned words in this channel. Even though some people manage to circumvent the whole problem, it's disgraceful, really. But there are some words that are banned in this channel. They are all basically variations of the same word, it has to be said. Oh, Windwalker Monks, yeah. Well, yeah, I can imagine, because they're the ones that got the biggest buff from when the Netherlight Crucible came out, aren't they? Yeah, see, I don't know. Can't wait to the next expansion. I really want to cleanse Lordaeron from the undead. I'm not so sure we're cleansing Lordaeron so much as just smashing it to pieces, from what I could tell in the cinematic. I have a question about Classic. How do you feel about the WoW token being taken? No. They're not going to do it either. They've actually said that they're not doing that. But it would be quite wrong to introduce something like that into the Classic servers. It would be foolish to introduce anything at all, because even if they produce a perfect replica of Classic WoW, it still won't really give you the same experience. But any differences in that experience have to be no fault of Blizzard's. They cannot put anything like that in it. And it sounds to me from what they've said that they have no intention of either. Why Gnome couldn't burn down Nomrigan instead of Teldrassil? Well, we don't know that it's Gnome's fault that it set fire to it. Yeah, that was Kisasha. That was got me a little bit, because yeah, Nomi is a little kiddie. I think you did find out it was male, because I think he was referred to as a he at some point in MOP. But when you first saw them, yeah, you would have thought it was like a girl, Pandaren. You saw him in MOP. Yeah, I thought it was a girl at first. But I think he was referred to as a he. The other thing is, we don't know. You talk about, sorry, JD, go back to your comment. You thought some people would find it unfair if they only played Classic and were not able to buy game time with gold. We don't know what the model is going to be for Classic. It might be like Diablo, where you just have a one-time purchase and then that's it. I wouldn't charge a subscription for it at all. I would, I might have it so that it's free for anyone who buys, or as a subscriber to World of Warcraft, or even just buys the next expansion or something like that. but I wouldn't. So yeah, I wouldn't charge a subscription, so I don't think that should be an issue. But they certainly can't have like the WoW token for it. Well, with Paladin tanks, it would depend very much on where they pitched it, because the tanking options changed dramatically. It was never good because we didn't have a taunt, but it changed dramatically because at the start of vanilla we had something called Seal of Fury, which is a seal you use which just basically did nothing, but it generated extra threat when you hit something. Then that was changed for Righteous Fury, which was a lot better, which was a buff, which meant that all your holy damage generated extra threat. So that included any holy damage, Judgment, Seal damage, heals even, Consecration. That made it way better for tanking. Loads better. But you still wouldn't be a progress main tank because you didn't have a taunt. Not having a taunt, bit of a problem. I also don't think they'd charge as much as $60. I think that's a bit mad. I don't think... They don't even charge $60 for like World of Warcraft, let alone the classic version of it. But anyway, sorry. Thoughts on the new legendary only obtainable with personal loot? Well, it seems to me that the reason it exists is maybe to gauge reaction. Like, put it this way, the legendary system in Legion has failed. You know, they've said they're not carrying it forward into the next expansion. But here's a thought. I know at various points during Legion, when I've talked about the legendary system, there have always been a few comments in the comment section on the video of people saying they would like to go back to the old style of legendary. Now, my attitude with the old style of legendary is it's inherently unsuitable for the modern game because it means a small number of people, potentially just one per guild, having a super powerful weapon, and also it's restricted by class. So some players could never even hope to get it. That's not a good system in today's game where it's not, you know, it's annoying enough when some people get lucky with their legendaries or Titan Forge and stuff like that. So, but what they might be doing it is to gauge opinion on if they were to bring it back, because there's a certain amount of support for the old style of legendary drops. And maybe this Amanthal's vision is their way of going, how would people react to the pure RNG of personal loot, so you don't have to assign it, really small chance to drop, so only a few people in the guild are going to get it in any reasonable amount of time at any rate. How are people going to react to that? May well be what they do. Consecration was a talent. Hold on. No, let me get this right. Hold on. I'm not sure. No, hang on. Oh, there's certain things changed at various points, Calrel, because I remember having Consecration as a 10-10-31 ret. So I think it changed at some point. But anyway, it may have changed to 11 points at some time. I'd have to check on the old talent trees now. There's a poll on Twitch based on 140 votes. 64 would not be... Yeah, 140 votes, though, is nothing, though, is it? Let's be honest. 64 would not play Classic if they had to pay anything for it. 8.5%... You can't mix numbers and percentages. Would pay a small price, and 27% pay whatever. The problem with that poll is, one, it's really small. Two, it will also be biased. Thinking as a statistician here, you've got a biased sample there, potentially, because you might well have people in there who are just retail players anyway. So if Blizzard are going to do some market research on that, I think, you know, they will be able to get a lot more respondents. But I wouldn't let's say, because what you're trying to attract ultimately is people who want to play Classic WoW who are currently on private servers. Now, these may well be people, a lot of which do not play the retail version, so they currently pay Blizzard nothing. I don't think they should charge them a subscription when they might only play the Classic servers and not the retail ones, even though they'd be allowed to do that as well. I would pay a flat fee, but it's easy for me to say that because I get the subscription anyway. But I would certainly pay a flat fee because I'd get enough play out of it that it would be worth it. But I'm just trying to think in terms of what would the people who are currently on private servers and insist they're not doing it because it's a free game, they're doing it because that's the game they want to play. Some of whom are telling the truth, by the way. But what would they accept? I would say Blizzard should really cost it as a loss leader, something just to break the private servers, because they know, like, if they get enough people playing it effectively for free, some of those players may then spend money getting other Blizzard games, because there's a lot of antagonism towards Blizzard as a result of this Classic WoW thing. You know, I'm not really intimate with the communities involved, but I got the strong impression there's an awful lot of antagonism towards Blizzard as a company. So these people are unlikely, even if they'd quite like to play Hearthstone or something like that, unlikely to do so because of that. Whereas bring them back into the fold and maybe they'd start to play a bit of Heroes of the Storm, Overwatch, that sort of thing. So I would charge maybe a flat fee just for the sake of it, and not very much. Maximum of $20. I mean, I know that's an arbitrary number. I wouldn't charge full game price, is what I'm saying. Sorry, what am I missing here? Let's have a look. Apparently the person that got the legendary trinket also got the healing trinket at the same time. That's interesting. So it's a totally separate loot table. Okay. That's interesting to note. Thing is, with Legos in Legion, if they had just put DPS ones and no utility, there'd have been less moaning from the community. There would have been less moaning, but I still don't think it would have been a good system. And yes, people would still moan about getting the best ones over the not best ones. In order to play retail, you do need to buy the original WoW. Well, yes, you do. You need to buy the original version of WoW and the current expansion, don't you? So, yeah. So, well, this is sometimes the way, Wolfpack, isn't it? That something happens on the North American servers when something goes live, and then it gets fixed for the EU. Sometimes it's something horrendous, like people disconnecting all the time in the new raid, and then we get away with it in Europe. Sometimes it's some beneficial thing that then gets fixed and we miss out. Could just buy that and gain vanilla access. I don't think Blizzard would have a problem with that. I mean, if they were going to say, buy any Blizzard game or just buy the base version of World of Warcraft and get Classic WoW with it. That also means that people who currently play World of Warcraft would just get it automatically for free. That I think would be fine. So that would work too. It could they just sell a bundle that is World of Warcraft minus the current expansion, which includes access to Classic WoW servers. We get the expansion earlier, they get the raids earlier. Well, we did in Legion, just because of the time difference. Because even though the launch date was supposed to be the 30th of August, technically it was 29th of August, with a few hours to go on the 29th, where I was anyway. So I did actually get to do a little bit on it before I had to go to bed and start going to work. After having 8 weeks off, where if they'd have brought it out at any time during that 8 weeks, I could have leveled up really quickly. But no. But I did get a few hours. Reports that with reports you sort of want some evidence though, Chris. People will be reporting all sorts of things at a time like this. I hesitate to use the word, but fake news is a thing. It's even in the dictionary now. So we'll just have to see. Oh, from Fat Boss Twitter. Well, it depends. Let's have a look. I should be following those on Twitter. If I can find them. Yeah, they're only saying reports that it was also coined, but, you know, they don't know personally either. You'd need to see it. It will be additive, Eris. So it will increase your... It just increases your mastery by... So if you've got... sorry, your judgment. So if your judgment does whatever, it's going to do 40% extra damage. On top of what the extra damage that mastery gives it. They get into trouble when they do multiplicative things, so I think they tend not to do that these days. BOE Arcanos, how's that work? What? That can't be right, surely. Arcanos. Oh, hold on, sorry, hold on. Let's shut that. Don't have the mute off there. So sad that whenever a new raid comes out, I do tend to not care for it. Only interested again halfway through. Well, this raid, of course, is a little different. I think it's a little bit disappointed there aren't more sort of known lore characters in it, given what is going to happen in it. Because you've got like ANR, Agrimar in terms of the Titans ones, but then you've also got like Varimathras. But then that's about it, isn't it, really? No, I really don't know. I'd need to see a screenshot of a BOE Arcana crystal before I sort of believe that, I think. The raid... I hope it's a lot more fun than Tomb of Sargeras. Tomb of Sargeras is my most hated raid ever now. More so than... I wasn't that impressed with Dragon Soul. But let's check the auction house. Well, it may not have occurred on every realm. But, yeah, I don't think it would make sense to have Arcano crystals on that are BOE, or any trinkets that you can get from those. I wouldn't mind if it was bound on account. By all means, let them be bound on account. Nighthold I thought was all right. I quite liked Nighthold. It was nice and varied. Tomb of Sargeras. I mean, obviously, I had personal gripes with Tomb of Sargeras. So, you know, I'm potentially quite biased looking at that. But, I mean, the mechanics may well be fairly unforgiving still. It may not be a case of soak this or everyone dies. Or, as the case is on Maiden of Vigilance, sometimes don't soak this, or soak this and everyone dies. It can be the other way around. It could be, oh, you've got a bomb. Would you like another bomb? Oh dear, everyone's dead. For people who are not paying attention. The Arcano crystal, would it sell for 1,000 million? Well, Kisashi, you probably wouldn't expect that if it's. I doubt it. Again, I think it's just one of these things. People are just throwing loads of things into the internet and seeing what sticks. But if it was a new thing, it would not apply to EU until tomorrow, would it? How goes my guild search? It seems I will be in a guild that will be raiding. So, very last minute. No real time to prepare as I might otherwise have liked. But, you know. You've got a 9:15 on something you no longer play. Well done. That's a great way to make friends here. But it's so. I mean, to be fair, I have to be fair. Like when the Netherlight Crucible first came out, not the Netherlight Crucible. Sorry, behave yourself. The Vindicar, sorry, and we're using that vendor. The first few weeks, I wasn't actually getting trinkets because I thought my chance of getting it was so low that I was working on getting items where I had a much better chance of getting an upgrade. And I did. I actually got a pair of braces that were an upgrade for me. But yeah, eventually I just decided the gear I had from Tomb of Sargeras by that point was high enough fighting level that other items would have to Titan Forge a bit. And I thought, well, even a base 910 Arcana crystal is going to be really good. So yeah, I'll just keep going for that now. Do I think the gap between Heroic and Mythic is too large? No. Just the nature of the way. I think it's just the nature of the way Heroic is. Like, I'll give you an example. On Heroic, there are mechanics on Mythic that are designed, if you don't deal with them properly, to kill you. And you cannot outgear them. So, for example, Crashing Wave on Mistress Azine. You know, the big shark thing comes over. Anyone in the way. On Mythic, you're dead. Okay? Even cheat death won't save you. An immunity can save you. Like, if I pop my bubble manually, that could save me from it. But a cheat death won't. And standing in it won't. And it doesn't matter how much you outgear it. Even at the end of the raid tier, when you've got really high item level, you will still die. But on Heroic, you can survive it. You know, to begin with, when your gear's not so good, it might kill you, but you could maybe use a cooldown, something like that. But as you outgear it, you will survive it. And I think that's one of the main differences between Heroic and Mythic. That in Mythic, you will be punished severely for not dealing with the mechanic. On Heroic, it has to be a lot more forgiving. Like I always say, sometimes your best Heroic player in a guild might be your worst Mythic player. Because I'll see logs of like people in Heroic guilds doing loads of real damage, but you look at them and they're just studying shit all the time, or they're failing this mechanic or whatever. In a Mythic guild, they would just be a millstone around everyone's neck, because they'd either be dead all the time or they'd be killing everyone else because they're not dealing with stuff. Don't worry, you got punished as your DK got the first 4 legendaries, being Biss for blood and Biss for frost. All right. Well, as a mage, you want, what do you want? You want wrists, don't you, usually? And I can't remember, chest or something. It is a huge difference going from Heroic to Mythic. There's no doubt about it. It's a massive difference. But I just think it's the nature of it. That well, the reason why it's progress all over again is because when you've done Heroic, there will be mechanics that were on Heroic, but it wasn't awfully important that you do them in properly. You could get away with it. And then all of a sudden you're doing Mythic and it's like, oh, I now have to do that mechanic. And it's the same mechanic you had on Heroic, only now you have to do it. Plus, of course, there's some extra ones thrown in for good measure. But Mythic is not nearly so bad when you realise that the mechanics take priority. That's just how it has to be. It's a different mindset you need, and then it's not actually as difficult. It is still difficult. I'm not going to be one of those people that goes, oh, it's all easy. But you have to just focus. You just have to focus on these mechanics. It's do the mechanics right, do the mechanics right, do the mechanics right. And then when you're doing the mechanics right and you're not beating a timer, a DPS check, then you start to up your DPS. By which time you spent so long practicing the mechanics that actually you're comfortable doing the mechanics whilst also now focusing more on doing more DPS. Nether Disruptor. Why? What's the next bonus on Nether Disruptor? He says, wondering if it's going to be the free bonus tokens. I don't really pay attention to them anymore on the Broken Shore. It's become largely irrelevant except when you get free seals out of it. And even then, it's only any good if you're spending those tokens. The last few weeks, I haven't been spending them. There's nothing to spend them on. Apart from Demonic Inquisition. I was spending them on Demonic Inquisition because, you know, drops the tier, the Abyss Fire Relic, sorry, that I've never got above baseline. It's still 930. I don't know what's going on. Oh, the token refunding. That's not going to be very helpful, is it? But isn't it only get one back on a roll fail on the Broken Shore? With 4 raiding difficulties, making Heroic a little more heroic would help recruitment in Mythic guilds. But again, it's like there is that difference between a Mythic mechanic, if not dealt with, will kill you or wipe your raid. On Heroic, you can't have that. It sounds like there's a line between the two, but it's a gulf just because of that philosophy. And I think it's actually quite different. All they could actually do to make Heroic harder is increase the amount of damage done to you, or you know, the amount damage you need to do to the bosses. But then that would just frustrate people who want to make quick progress on it. Because it also has to be said, a lot of Heroic raiders will also not want to spend ages progressing on one boss, as in days after days, and certainly not weeks. Yeah, check, but I had an inkling that the seal refund only works on the Broken Shore. And even if it says Broken Isles, that still won't help it on Argus. Actually, another thing I ought to do, I know where Antorus is roughly as a raid, but I don't know the best route to get there. I ought to work that out as well. Got so much to do tonight. Some later bosses in Heroic are easier than the first Mythic bosses. It's only because of that mindset, though. The first few Mythic bosses are always... The first 3 are always easy. But I'll tell you a story. So, when we did Mythic Tomb of Sargeras, first week, we wiped on Goroth the first pull. Second pull, we killed it. I'm pretty sure it was the second pull. We killed it within a few pulls, anyway. The next week, however, we wiped on it for 2 hours. Reason for that is because there's a Mythic mechanic, or still is, Rain of Brimstone, where you've got to soak it. If no one soaks it, then an Infernal spawns. That's basically going to wipe you, because it's too... unless you like overgear it. If one person soaks it and they haven't got an immunity, they'll die. So you actually need multiple people to soak it as well to share the damage. There's 3 of these things. So let's say you need at least 3 people soaking each one, 4 to make it comfortable. Well, 4 people soaking means 12 people soaking in total. And they can be anywhere. They could all be in melee, they could all be in range, they could be a mix somewhere as well. Now, if you want 4 in each one, especially early on in the tier when you don't have loads of gear, so you want 4 in each one to make sure no one dies. And you might have, you also might have some people, I've forgotten the name of the bloody ability now, that you get with the circle around you that's going to fire a dot into you at one point. You don't want those people soaking it either. And you might have a few of those out. And then you've got the 2 tanks. Well, they've got no business going there as well. Before you know it, you actually need most of the people in your raid to be soaking one of these things. So for every person that just sticks on the boss or tunnels the boss and leaves it to everyone else, you risk there not being enough people in one of those circles, which can mean someone dying. And that's what causes you to wipe over and over and over and over again. Because the more people die, the fewer people there are to soak the ones that are out there. And it just dominoes. But if everyone runs out and soaks on Goroth, those Rains of Brimstone, forgets their damage at that time because it's not a DPS check, they just run out and soak it, that fight's exactly the same as Heroic in all the regards. Well, there is one change, but again, you deal with it. The pillars, when they explode, you just go... Pff. So you make sure you try and control the numbers of pillars, sure, okay. But other than that, it is the same as Heroic. You just have to do everything right. But people don't, because they do it... Because they don't see it as it's basically the same as Heroic, they do it like they do Heroic. If you do it like you do Heroic, then you will wipe. You have to do it like you're doing Heroic properly. Best route to Antorus change because the pellet. Yeah, that's right. The teleporters keeps changing where they are. There's like 3 main positions, aren't there? I think, and 2 teleporters which sort of vary around. Hi, Diablo. You do have the option, potentially, if you're stuck on the very last boss in Heroic, to do some on Mythic if you've got the numbers and the, a reasonable raid balance. There is also that option. I mean, it's a lot better than it used to. I mean, it used to be the case that you could... Well, the way they've done Heroics changed over the years so much. In MOP, I mean, in Throne of Thunder, it was just its worst, I think. Because there, I mean, this is when it was normal Heroic rather than like Heroic Mythic. It's just different names for the same thing. And you switched it on and off for individual bosses. So one of the easier bosses on Heroic was actually one of the later bosses. So you'd do certain bosses on Heroic, then you'd switch it to normal mode and then do those. And then you'd go up to the boss you want to progress on next and then do Heroic. So it was a really weird thing. Until you got to the last boss, it was right, constantly switching between modes. Yeah, there are a lot of people. I mean, I've had a small number of people, not loads, but I've had a small number of people who I wasn't able to recruit on the Maelstrom, which is a decent sized guild. It's not one of the big ones, but it's a decent size, just because it wasn't one of the big ones. So I can only imagine what it must be like on a genuinely small one. Did my head in changing the mode all the time? Oh, it was madness. I mean, you could argue the Ulduar system, even though I missed that, I wasn't playing at the time, was a better system because there you triggered that's the first time Heroic came in. And you triggered the Heroic mode by doing a thing, didn't you? You know, that was actually quite good. I'm not quite sure why they got rid of that. Yeah, well, that's the other thing you've got. I mean, if you're gonna, let's say you're a Heroic guild and you're trying to recruit Mythic ready raiders, Like someone who's experienced in Mythic and therefore knows what to do in Mythic, they're not going to join a guild like that. Because why would they? Because there's never a situation where you can say we just need one more player and then we can go Mythic, realistically. So it's like, well, even if they join you, you're still a heroic guild if you've got enough. So unless you happen to find a group of 5 friends who all know what they're doing, then you can't. No, they won't remove LFR. LFR serves a purpose. I think attitudes to gaming have changed now. I think that's what the issue is. You know, people expect that sort of single player thing. Oh, hi, Sino. Oh, thank you very much. I think there are a lot of people that just want that. Yes, and it's very accessible. Like, I mean, I play other MMOs as a casual, and actually, the casual experience, the leveling experience in World of Warcraft for a new player is complete shambles compared to the others. But once you get to level cap, the casual experience is better because you don't really have to know about protocols or anything like that. You can just sign up to do a heroic dungeon, and no one says anything. No one has to know it. Obviously, if you sign up as a tank, you sort of have to know in which direction to point yourself. But you don't really have to know a lot. But if you just go in as a DPS, no one says... People won't even notice if you're not doing anything most of the time. They're just running through. Anyway, just keep up. LFR, same sort of thing. Yes, sure, when there's a wipe, people will start to examine the people who did no damage. Irrelevant whether it's their fault or not. So you want to try and do something in LFR just in case you wipe, because otherwise the knives come out. Because I remember that time, this was going back to Mob and Throne of Thunder. Just people who've been watching it quite a while will know. Preach did a thing on LFR, because I don't think he's a fan. He certainly wasn't at the time, saying he reckoned, and he proved it as well, he reckoned that he could go into LFR and do nothing. In fact, worse than do nothing, he could actually deliberately stand in all the bad stuff, deliberately cock everything up, and be fine. And he did all that, and he got kicked once. And I'll bet the one time he got kicked wasn't because he did anything terrible. I'll bet it was just because they wiped, and then they just automatically called the bottom 2 or 3 on damage. Because that's how some people are. Oh, we wiped. Oh, it must be because we didn't do enough damage. That's never the reason people wipe on LFR. 0% of the time is that the reason people wipe on LFR. LFR is a tour for raiding. Oh, it is, really, isn't it? Didn't Blizzard even call it that? What do they call it now? I've forgotten the phrase they used, but it meant the same thing. Can't think of the word they use now. But that's basically how they see it. It's like a guided bus tour through the instance, just so that you can do the storylines. Tourist mode. There we go. Almost exactly the same. The reason it's in the game is for the people who literally want to do the raids. For some people, I'm sure it's quite easy to get into pugs if you play certain classes and specs that are always tricky. But for some, it's not easy. Because it's like, can you show me ahead of the curve? Well, this is normal. Yeah, but I still want ahead of the curve. Do you know what keeps happening as well to like Mythic Raiders? I don't know how many people have noticed this. One of our guildies said this earlier this week as well. Someone in my guild got themselves into a bit of trouble because they were asked to link their ahead of the curve. Now, if you have cutting edge on a boss, it's not an easy thing to link ahead of the curve because in your feats of strength, it just puts the cutting edge one. There is the head of the curve in there, but it's made smaller. So they just linked the cutting edge achievement and they weren't allowed in. And they said, why not? It says, because you're not, I asked you to link ahead of the curve. Because some people just don't actually know what cutting edge is. It's like, well, I've asked for ahead of the curve and you've not linked ahead of the curve, so you're not coming in. It's like, I've killed it on Mythic. Doesn't matter. That's not good enough. I need people who've killed it on Heroic. So bad. So yeah, Mythic Raiders sometimes struggle to get in raids as well. But mostly it's going to be newer players who won't have those achievements, because you can't get the achievement until you're in the raid, and you can't get into the raid without the achievement. So WOD LFR was the best. Different loot, yeah. Well, I would agree with that. In fact, WOD LFR was also fairly straightforward for most bosses, to the point where I was able to run 2 at once, because I had my 2 accounts. And what I sometimes used to do was queue up 2 characters at once, but not together. I'd queue them up separately, so they'd end up in different LFRs, just to give me a bit of interest. And this is without even 2 monitors. And I used to cycle between them. I used to, we'd be pulling on a fight on one. I'd do some damage, so I showed up on the damage meter, then get myself killed, go on to the other one and do the rest of the fight on that one, and try to just juggle between the 2, so that I did enough damage to not get kicked, but basically did 2 LFRs at once on 2 different characters. I mean, that's probably just as good an advertisement for how basic it is, but it has to be basic because it is that tourist mode. It is just for people who don't want to, because I can imagine it can take some people, like if you want to get into a pug, you might have to spend your whole weekend just trying to get invited into one. And it's just for people who want to go, do you know what, I just want to queue, look at the queue, you know, eat a biscuit while I wait for the queue to pop. Maybe a few biscuits if you DPS. Wait for it to pop, go in, get it done, get out of there. And they don't want to spend hours and hours trying to get into a group and then maybe find themselves kicked from the group partway through, or bullied into giving up loot. You know, there's all these add-ons that were very unpopular at a time. For example, the add-on that sees what items someone's get and says, oh, these people could benefit from this item, and then be potentially bullied into giving it up. Well, LFR is a little bit better than a random battleground, because in a random battleground, at least 1/2 of the people in it are going to be disappointed. Whereas in LFR, you all either win or lose. So there is at least a bit more camaraderie in there. That's what it's called, was it? Personal loot helper. I mean, I've known people that have done pugs and banned the add-on. They will actually kick the person with the add-on. Took you stupidly long to do heroic avatars a ret in a pug. It's not a good fight for rets. Well, unless you like to whore. Like, we've been doing these ones on Saturday afternoon with Fardian, who's been organising them. And Stone Thunder is one of the rets in the Discord as well. He's been, the last few weeks, whoring on the maiden on it. Just cleaving off it and doing loads of damage. See you later, Lenoros. The problem with LFR kill Jade, and I've not done it that many times, but when I've done it, it's sort of been okay. The problems have always... I thought the problem would be people having to run out and soak. Because I thought, well, how's that going to work on LFR? It actually worked okay. That was fine. And one missed one isn't going to kill you on LFR. The problem came with timing. If you had a bunch of reflections come up at the same time as going into the Illidan phase, that was troublesome. And that's what happened the first time I did it. And then a couple of pulls later, it sort of seemed to work out. Because you need to either push the boss or get those reflections killed before you push the boss. Now, in an organised raid, you can have a raid leader who controls it. They can either say, stop DPS on the boss, move the reflections out, or push the boss like mad, we need to beat this. You don't get that in LFR. You got Curve in June, you haven't raided since. Oh, it's not that bad. I think I've done heroic most weeks. Really? I think there was some weeks where I sort of just went on my rogue, but I think on some character or other, I've done it every week, I think. Stop DCS and really sit, but that's what you have to do. That's mechanics. Sometimes you have to just stop. What do I think of the ending cinematic in Antorus? I mean, it wasn't unexpected, of course, because we sort of knew a few things in advance. I sort of already agreed not to talk about specifics in it, because we're still regarding it as a trailer. Sorry, as a spoiler. Trailer, behave yourself. As a spoiler until, let's say, a good week has been out. I think this time next week, then we don't have to call it a spoiler anymore. Have I found a guild? Yes, I have. In fact, it's quite annoying. Because, not annoying that I found a guild. It's quite annoying that I've been accepted by a couple. Which is awkward. But that was the problem. I got towards the very end of everything. And so I had to apply for several at once. I don't normally apply. Like, I'd normally apply for one guild. And then if I didn't get anything from that, I would apply for another, and so on. I would be Alliance. So in terms of the sort of choosing, it wasn't a difficult decision. I am perfectly prepared to take a bigger risk to stay Alliance. It's not that I won't raid. I did raid Horde. I've played Horde for a year at the end of WoD and very start of Legion. You know, I would do that. But I will always favour Alliance, and to get an Alliance guild, I would rather. I will go into a riskier situation. It's on a strange realm as well. It was someone who suggested it to me as well. It's not someone that was actually advertising for Red Paladin. I didn't mention the server I'm moving to now. You'll see tomorrow. You can look me up tomorrow. And then on Thursday I'll be streaming again. So if you haven't worked it out by then you will be able to. Of course, I will also be updating my information on... would I regard Draenei and Orcs as children as Azeroth? No. Nothing to do with Azeroth. It's not Silvermoon, no. It's a very strange realm. Which is why, even though the person who suggested it some last week, basically, I was like, no. But apparently it's not what I thought. So, you know. No, not Argent Dawn. No, I'm not going to say anything more. But you'll find out soon enough. Have some patience. Goodness sake. I'm not going to say anymore. But thinking ahead to Battle for Azeroth, do you think the Nightborn should be able to be paladins? No. I don't really. I wouldn't be as opposed to it as for some things. But the it doesn't sit right somehow, Nightborn, because yes, well, Lady Liadrin indeed did persuade them, and she is a paladin. Yes, which is why it's possible, but I still think that they are creatures of the arcane as a people. Now, you could argue at some point in the future, maybe, because I would say it probably takes some time for her, because paladins have to use the light, like exclusively, basically. And so I would say that although in time she might be able to persuade a few, that in the here and now I'd be a bit funny about it. Well, Protection Paladins use arcane relics. Well, Retribution Paladins use fire relics as well. But in terms of our abilities, it's holy. You know, we just use holy magic. No, that would be unfair. In fact, I'm going to have to delete a character actually, because I remember I had this last time when I transferred my hunter to my current realm. That because it was full on characters, it won't actually even let you transfer, because the way it seems to work with a character transfer is it creates a copy on the realm you're going to and then deletes the one from the realm you've left. Must be how it works, because it will not transfer if you've got 50 characters, which is the limit. And I got through to a GM and everything, and I was told the only solution to this is to delete a character. It says that's all you can do. So I'm going to have to do that. I have a lot of level 1 characters. Admittedly, I don't need them anymore. They existed when I used to try and recruit. And like sometimes on WoW Progress, or a lot of the time actually, people wouldn't leave their battle tag. So if they're on a different realm, the only way you could talk to them, because no one ever follows you back, or hardly any people follow you back. No, I don't have 50 that I care about. That's why it's not a big deal. But a lot of them are level 1s on other realms. So I used to go across there and try and talk to them. If they weren't in-game, I'd do a few quests and then mail them an in-game mail, giving them my battle tag number. Now that's less needed. Well, apart from the fact I'm not going to be recruiting anymore. But on WoW Progress, they've actually improved it after years of like it being rubbish. They've improved it now so that it has a box prompting you to put your battle tag in it. So if you're looking for a guild, flagged as looking for a guild, you are prompted to put that in. You don't have to still, but I haven't yet seen anyone who hasn't. So it's quite easy. It will give me quite a lot of extra time, Six Skeptics, yes. It will give me extra time to do other things. Not least of which is integrate with a new guild. And learn new... I won't be able to... I don't know their voices. I'm going to have to make sure all my overlay works for Discord. So there'll be loads of things I need to set up, and I won't have time to set it all up before the first raid. So I'll be listening to people and going, I ain't got a clue who you are. I'll just have to recognise the raid leader. That's all I need to do. Ignore everyone else. I'm sure you could restore the character, but as I say, I have a number of level 1s that only existed for recruitment purposes, which I don't need anymore. It's just that I won't be able to... It's not an easy thing to delete them, though, because usually I put heirloom gear on them so that they can go through the first few quests and use the heirloom mount quickly. Whereas, although the heirloom mount doesn't really matter, you can't delete a character with heirlooms, which is mad now. I don't understand that, because you're not permanently deleting the heirlooms, they're in your tab. I don't understand why you can't delete a character with heirlooms. It's maddening. But you can. So you have to delete the heirlooms and then delete the character. No, you'll find out. You don't have to be curious for that long. You do have pre-checked name availability and created enough little Thetes of various realms to have your name reserved for future use. I mean, I've got a number of little Thetes lying around. I usually leave a name placer when I leave a guild, leave a raid. Sorry, a realm. So yeah. I wouldn't necessarily know how old the guild is anyway, would I? All I know is it's older than a week ago. That's when someone told me about it. But yeah. Right, hold on. Is there any more news come out? What's Celestial on posting now? What is up with this man? New raid has just come out and he's tweeting a picture of something wrapped in bacon. I don't even know what it is. You paid for a race change. I hope that means you're getting to BFA beta now. So I'm hoping I'm getting into BFA beta quite early on. Like I keep saying, it's like one of these annoying situations now where I sort of will really want to. Well, maybe this is why, if your chances are close to zero if you don't pay for additional services, I don't think that's true. But if it is true, it might explain why I've been quite lucky. Whenever I've signed up to a beta, I've tended to get in, or the last few anyway, I could probably only say the last couple. Which betas I've been in? I didn't actually even bother to apply for the TBC one. I went into Wrath beta, but I got that on the strength. That was an automatic invite based on something. I didn't I wasn't playing when the Cataclysm beta was out. I got into Mop quite early on. That was a bit of just luck. And then into WoD as well early on. Again, dumb luck. And then Legion. I got in very early on. I got into early out. It was the second wave when the alpha went open. You won't be able to tell. Rets were, yeah, things were changed for Rets on that BlizzCon testing floor, but those changes were not necessarily intended for BFA. They may have just been changes to allow people to have played the BFA without an artifact weapon. So no point in trying to read anything into it until it all goes, until the beta comes out. Well, Wake of Ashes replaced Holy Wrath, and they also did change Crusade a bit. I can't remember. Oh, did they change Wake of Ashes? They changed something else. But yeah, it could just be a placeholder. Like, they're going to get rid of Holy Wrath. They have to do something with Wake of Ashes. But I would think they should just make Wake of Ashes baseline, because it's too important a spell just to have as a talent. I'd be very disappointed if they keep that. And even if it's like that on beta, I would imagine they'll be planning on changing it at some point when they can think of... They just need to think of a decent talent to replace Holy Wrath with. I mean, almost anything would be... I mean, they could just replace it with nothing and that would be better. No, I'm not sure as well. We'll find... That's just one of those things. We know it's not coming out this side of Christmas. We know it's coming out in the new year. We don't know how early in the new year. You know, it might be January, it might be February. But, well, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea, Action Man, without going on too much about Rets for everyone else, if they just had 3 different talents that all changed Avenging Wrath in some way. You know, I would think that's not bad for any DPS spec. You know, a whole talent row that just modifies your baseline DPS cooldown in some way that allows you to, like, tailor it for particular types of fights. Maybe one of them is more for... Maybe one of them gives you a smaller amount of burst but more regularly for fights where that's going to favour it. Maybe one of them gives you more single target burst. One of them gives you more AoE potential. Something like that. You know, that's what I would do. And I'll say I think a lot of specs would welcome something like that. You know, just in general, I would say, having whole talent rows that just modify one baseline ability in different ways to make it flexible, I prefer those over ones where you've got competing talents, you know, one of which is a defensive, one is a movement one. It's like, well, they don't go together. Don't do that. Yeah, well, I have my... Because that's another thing, I'm going to have to transfer a few characters eventually, but I can get away without transferring. I just need to make up a load of flasks and potions, and then I'll send the others over at the weekend. You're pretty sure their design goals for BFA was fixing dead talents? Yes, but the problem is, I agree, Calrel, the issue is, if all they do is fix what they perceive as a dead talent, it's the system that's the problem. You might replace a dead talent and make it better, and then you create another dead talent. So the only way to get rid of dead talents completely is to make sure they are all useful in certain circumstances. And I just think that, I'm not saying the only way to do it, I just think the easiest way to do it is to just have related talents on the same row. You know, I mean, I just think that's easier. Yeah, they've actually confirmed here, Warcraft devs. It's no great news anyway. It says there will likely doesn't mean definitely, admittedly. There will likely be a tuning pass based on the first week of live Antorus data. This may also include adjustments to old set bonuses. In other words, if they find, like all the Rets are going to do, that people are going to use 2-piece tier 21 and 4-piece tier 20, they're going to nerf the tier 20. That's what they mean by that. So expect that, by the way. Don't, if you're thinking to yourself, as I would be at the moment, okay, 2 set of tier, 2 pieces of tier, that'll do me, I don't need any more. Don't turn your nose up if you get a 3rd piece or something, because the following week you might well find that it's going to be useful. Well, not until it's a 4th piece, admittedly, but still. Because I would find it incredible if they would allow people, even for a few weeks, to be using 4 pieces of the old tier over the 4-piece new tier. A DK asked you if you know where the Veiled Argonite vendor is because he's capped. You get a quest to go and see it, don't you? There's a quest that introduces you to it. I've got a legendary. Do DKs want legendary risks? Which legendary risks would they be? Can't think now. But it's supposed to have a reasonably high chance of getting you a legendary. Hiya. This topic has been in my mind recently. Do you think they could have done anything with Justice Gaze to not make it horrible legendary, but still revolve around stuns? Not really. Not for me, anyway. The only thing they could have done is make it so it was an AoE stun. If they'd have modified it so that your Fist of Justice became, or Hammer of Justice, really, we should call it now, an AoE stun, then it would have had some potential. Oh, it's the Pillar of Frost one. Okay, well, that's quite good. So that's the only thing I could think of that they could do, or could have done with just. Obviously, it's too late. There's no point. But that's the. Well, let's say it's too late. It's not actually too late. But it's the only legendary I keep in my bank. All the rest are in my bags. Because every other legendary I have, even my Holy and Prot ones, I look at them and think, well, actually, maybe I would use it in this situation or that situation. That helm, that legendary helm for Reds, I would never use it. But if they made it so that your stun, instead of doing damage, did AoE stun, situations. Mythic Plus, it could come in useful on some fights. Even, there are even some raid encounters where an AoE stun is a nice thing to have. Is Artifact Knowledge stopping at 55? Yes, it is. And I am stopping at 75 artifact level, at least for now. The artifact power I gain now is being used to get my off specs up, even though I don't really use them. So I've got the 75 now, so I don't even care about AP, really. It's quite liberating that I don't have to do a load of that anymore. We'll need to do a plus 15 dungeon in future from this reset. But at least I don't have to go farming AP. It'll also be interesting to see, because all the way through Tomb, from my weekly cash, I kept getting mastery stuff. I've kept the good pieces. But now that mastery is going to be useful, the question becomes, am I going to... am I still going to keep getting mastery pieces, which I actually might appreciate. Well, what matters for the 75, Action Man, is what is your second, as in your bottom tier, Netherlight Crucible trait. Because that's the one you're missing at the moment. Plus, also, we're about to start a new tier where all your relics are suddenly, you're going to find higher item level ones that will potentially be better, even if they're buffs, even if their benefits are not as good. Hiya, Church. Endgang stout. You're 72.5 on your out. Well, I'm not. I mean, I have outs that I never play and they're not very high at all. I suppose if I started playing on my rogue a bit more, but I don't know. Like, when I'm going, don't do split runs, so I won't need my rogue or hunter. So maybe I could just spend that time levelling up the shaman like I keep intending to. But once you've got to 75 artifact power, then level, sorry, that's it. You don't, you know, you get such small returns just for going up each level after that, and it takes so much AP that you did the Army of the Light image on 11 of your characters. Oh, is that for? I don't even have 11 characters that can that could actually go there and do that. Seeing your videos of which legendaries upgrades. Are there any changes? Possibly, yeah. I mean, it depends on your personal circumstances. Generally speaking, because I think one of the ones I may have said was like, generally speaking, you wouldn't upgrade a legendary ring or neck, but especially ring, first. But it all depends on which ones you're going to use. So for me, I'll upgrade the legendary belt first, because, you know, I would use that. There's no point in me upgrading the cloak, because I intend to go, even though I'm using the cloak right now, I intend to go 2 set plus 4 set. Now, I might have to rethink it, because I don't know how quickly I can get the 2 set. And then, but the problem with the rings, at the moment, I would also intend to use a ring. The problem with the rings is they have a lower stat budget, and the legendary effect isn't increased by the item level. So the benefit of the legendary effect doesn't change at all. It's only the stats on it. And in particular, the soul ring, the one that's the class ring. So Soul of the High Lord for Paladins, for example, has a really small stat budget on it. So even though it's one that I might well use, it's not really one that you get a lot of benefit from upgrading. Someone's incredible maths deducted that if going from artifact level 75 to 77, you'd get 1% more DPS. It's not true to say that would make a raid of 20 do 20% more damage, because a few things. One, you don't get 20 people in a raid unless it's heroic, maybe, and you've got loads of them doing DPS. Some of them are healers, and some of them are tanks, and they're not going to do that much anyway. And also, it's not like saying the raid's doing 20% more damage. It's the raid of 20 people. It's still the raid doing 1% more damage. It's dodgy maths playing that game. But the other issue is that 1% is, even if it's true, and I don't even think it is true, but let's say it was true, that you can lose 1% damage on just scratching your nose or something like that. Well, the Soul of the High Lord won't be not RNG, because it specifically gives you a talent that is RNG. And it's a talent that people asked for as well. Divine Purpose wasn't in the alpha for quite a long time. It was people specifically saying they missed the proc-based gameplay of Res. Because in early alpha, there wasn't very much proc-wise going on. It was all very predictable. People didn't like it. So that's certainly not going to change. But there's pros and cons to the different, you know, which legendaries to use. I mean, that's the thing. It's no longer the case that there's two. I mean, at the start, there was two you definitely wanted, because there are only two good ones. Now, there's 4 or 5 you can sort of rotate between, depending on circumstances, which is a better way to look at it. The only downside is when you're changing gear around from fight to fight, it also changes important stats, and haste quite sensitive to, because your muscle memory is sort of when it's used to particular cooldowns on certain abilities, and then your haste changes significantly. Well, that means that they're going to come off cooldown a bit quicker or a bit more slowly, and it can sometimes throw you out. Which is why I don't like things that give me random haste procs, for example, because, you know, having my haste unpredictably change mid-fight is something I don't really like. Well, time walking, you're time walking as well. I didn't do challenge modes, but time walking you can come into trouble because, again, your haste varies quite a lot just wearing the same gear once it's all been scaled down to the right level. Oh, I love a bit of Marmite. I have some. The thing is, I've recently, with my Marmite, taken to getting the squeezy bottle things. The problem with it is then you end up wasting a load of it because it just won't come out. When it's full, it's fine. It works fine. As it gets a bit empty, no, it's about half full. It's not. You have to press on it quite hard. And when it starts to get a bit empty, it's like you're not. There's loads in there. You're not getting it out. So I think I need to stop that. It's a bit wasteful. But let's have a look. Oh. Just looking at a screenshot of people around Argus with the thing that must not be mentioned because it's still a spoiler. There's a few things showing up on WoW Progress. It's going to take a while because, of course, you have to sort of log out and everything to get anything to register on Heroic. Although, weirdly, there's like 7 guilds showing up as having killed Garothi Worldbreaker. That's the first boss, fine. And 1 guild doing King Garoth, but that's like nowhere near the beginning of the place. So that's a bit weird that it's not showing the others. You missed the times when you didn't think about BIS legendaries. Well, yes. I mean, there are always BIS things to talk about. See, the thing is, you could argue you can't talk about BIS gear now because BIS gear is whatever is Max Titanforge. What is Max Titanforge now going to be? Hold on, I've forgotten. Bisless. But yeah, you could be arguing it was a little bit boring then. The other thing is 985. No, is it 985 goes up 30? Yeah, it goes up 30, doesn't it? Yes, that sounds right. So yes, we'll have to maybe keep trying to get the trinkets, trying to get a 985 Arcana crystal. Do I think Sylvanas will move away from the Forsaken and become more bound to the Horde? I don't know. It's all really interesting, isn't it? The thing is about the synopsis of the book, Before the Storm, that's coming out, is it's clearly showing that she is torn between having to maintain her authority as War Chief of the Horde, which effectively needs to be done in Orgrimmar, and maintain her authority in Undercity, which is taking a knock as a result of moving away from the Undercity. And the thing is, to bear in mind, I think I mentioned this in a video, that she's already faced a coup because actually, no, I did talk about this in a video, but it's a video that's not coming out till Thursday. But she faced a coup in Wrath of the Lich King. You know, very Methras and Putricide. So she has got experience of losing control of Undercity. So it will be quite interesting to see exactly the sequence of events that leads to it all. Knowing you can get your character to a point where it's perfect feels good. Well, I don't know that it does, because then isn't it all the more disappointing when a new thing comes out and you know you're going to have to replace it all? Because I would think, I know a lot of people, well, people I've known found it disappointing that they would get to, especially when the new expansion came out, because the idea of replacing your BIS items with greens, which I don't think happened as much as people felt. Mostly you would replace them. If it was greens, it was very late on greens. And but nonetheless replacing them. Although it's probably less of a thing now. In TBC, I know it drove people mad. In like when TBC came out, the idea of replacing epics, because in vanilla epics were still the preserve of the raiders and the very high-end PvP players. So the idea of replacing them with quest greens, they didn't like that at all. But even in TBC, it took you some time to get yourself fully togged out in epics again. Whereas now, you're wearing quite a lot of epics before the raid even comes out. You know, I had quite a few epics before Emerald Nightmare even launched. So I guess, I don't know whether people feel as worried about it now. But nonetheless, the fact that you're getting rid of BIS items for ones that are really... And especially trinkets when you're leveling up, because it's a bit like, well, I'm not going to sim it, because that would be silly. But is this trinket better than this trinket I've got? Because it's like 30 or 40 item levels above it, but the effect on the trinket I'm wearing is really fantastic. The effect on the trinket I'm using here is like conjure some mana berries or something. See you later, Fraser. No, ignore DPS rankings completely. You wait and see. You just wait to see what happens to the actual physical logs. In fact, hold on. There won't be any yet, will there? It's too early. Or will there? Your Hellfire Citadel set, you think was around 108. All right, yeah. Well, that's the thing, I think. If you've got the best epics from the previous expansion, it's usually very late on when you actually do replace them. It's not like you're going to replace it with the first quest you come along. Right, what am I looking for? Yeah. Let's see now. Antorus, the Burning Throne. Normal. Ah, there's no logs posted yet. It would be too early, wouldn't it? Can't, you know. Yeah. The people that are doing it first probably private logs for whatever reason. I'll have to wait. But in a week's time, then we can start to see how it's going. And then, of course, in a week's time, Blizzard are going to make some changes. Then we'll have to wait another week to see how it's going again. And we have to wait till Blizzard stop monkeying about with it before we actually properly get to see how it is. It will also be interesting to see the world race starting up again soon. See how that goes. And if it can actually be done in a more predictable manner this time, without having to spend like a week on one boss when you've done all the other bosses within a few days. No, no, no. I don't... No. Why? What? Nothing's happened to Exhaust, has it? That I'm not aware of. I'm pretty sure they're still in it. Well, if you want a BIS list, you just effectively have to present... whatchamacallit, the preferred gear. The recommended gear, I think it's called. Now, where you would... I suppose one place you could get that, and it would cover for any class or spec, is if you download the latest Simcraft and then go into the profiles, and where it says tier 21 profile, just use those. It's a little bit different on Asian servers though, isn't it? It's like a different game. So I'm not sure how fair it is really to compare. I mean, apart from anything else, on the Asian servers, Retribution Paladins do damage. A lot of it. They do crazy things with it, and they sort of get, and it seems to, you know, so it's a different situation. But anyway, we've sort of come to the end on this one. I've unfortunately got several things to do. I need to do the WoW Flash, which will mostly be like speculation. It might be a load of stuff that by the time it comes out has already been rubbish, so that's not going to be fun. I need to like sort stuff out for transferring and stuff like that as well as a load of other things that I'll no doubt forget. So I'm going to call it an end here. Thanks very much for coming on. There'll be another one next week. It may not be called the Tuesday Talk at some point, even though I don't have to change it from Tuesday. I might still change the name anyway for reasons. But it will still be going on, of course. So if it happens to be called something else next week, then it's just the same thing. But thanks very much for coming on. And for those on YouTube, because I'll put this onto YouTube as well, thanks very much for watching. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with other people who might be interested. And until next time, I shall see you later.